Joining us live from the party conference in Manchester is the man himself, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. Good morning. Welcome to Talk Today.
Morning, Jeremy. Morning, Nicola.
Chancellor, can I start by saying your rise to the living wage, I know, will be welcome news to many. But I want you to imagine that I'm a dissatisfied and disenchanted Tory voter who lives north of the M25. And when I understand that the cost of living crisis is making it difficult for me to make ends meet, when I look at my government that has the highest tax rate in 70 years, I want to hear from my Chancellor that he's going to make the pound worth more in my pocket. What would you say to me if you wanted to win my vote back, Jeremy Hunt?
What I'd say to that person, Jeremy, is the biggest thing I can do to help make the pound in your pocket worth more is to bring down inflation. And we are making progress because of decisions that Rishi Sunak and I took. When we came into office, it was over 11%. Now it's down at 6.7%. We want to halve it by the end of the year, and we're making progress. But that is just the start of much bigger long-term economic reforms. And you mentioned the national living wage. We want to make work pay. So we want to make sure that people who are out of work are properly trying to look for work. But if you do the right thing, then for the first time ever, you will get paid more than £11 an hour. That means that people in work are getting £9,000 a year more than they got in 2010. And that's one of the reasons why we've got unemployment down by 1 million in the time we've been in office.
And Chancellor, obviously you've announced this raise in the living wage to £11 an hour, which is wonderful news for those struggling to afford to pay their bills. That's obviously going to have a much smaller impact on employers with large profit margins. But are you going to be giving any support for smaller business owners who might now be forced to actually get rid of staff if they're not supported to keep up with these wage increases?
Well, what we found in the past is that if you stage the increases in the national living wage the right way, it doesn't have that impact and people don't lose their jobs. But we are always thinking about what we can do to help smaller business. I'll give you one example. In the budget, I said that we would give business rates relief for pubs, restaurants, hospitality businesses of 75%, a 75% discount in their business rates of up to £100,000. And that is helping them keep the show on the road in very difficult times. So we'd always try and help those small businesses. I ran one myself for 14 years before I became an MP, and I know just how tough it is.
Chancellor, we really do appreciate you being on. There's so many people who want us to ask so many things. If I can bring it back to tax, somebody said earlier that there are so many different factions within the Tory party, 7 groups and counting. This lack of commitment to reducing tax, which you say is because you need to get inflation down. 30 Conservative MPs have signed a pledge against that. Even Cabinet Minister, your colleague who sits around that table from you, Michael Gove, told Times Radio this weekend he wants tax cuts before the next general election. When you hear that, and when you consider a poll, an exclusive poll for Talk Today that we've done, thank you to one poll, by the way, do you trust the Tories on the economy? What does the Chancellor make when 59% of our viewers and listeners said they don't? How'd you get that back?
Well, first of all, by making sure that people understand the facts. The Office for National Statistics changed their assessment of the British economy, and they said that we have recovered better than both France or Germany from the pandemic. We've actually grown faster than both of those countries since 2010 as well. But let's go to tax, Jeremy, because that's the heart of the issue that you wanted to raise. And what I will be saying in my speech this afternoon is very clear. If we want faster growth, if we want to stop ever ratcheting taxes, that is possible. But there are no shortcuts. We have to make it easier for businesses to grow. We have to be more careful with the way that we spend taxpayers' money on public services. We have to be prepared to reform the welfare state. These are difficult decisions, but with Rishi Sunak, we have a Prime Minister who's willing to take those difficult decisions. And we are very confident if we do that, we can get the country back on a path to lower tax. Now, that is a dividing line in British politics because the Labour Party don't want to lower taxes. They raised taxes in 13 out of 13 budgets when they were in power. And we want to take things in a different direction, and we are willing to take the difficult decisions to do so.
Chancellor, you said there Rishi Sunak and your party are willing to make those difficult decisions, yet he still cannot confirm whether or not HS2 is going ahead. Can you tell us today whether or not HS2 will happen?
Well, when that decision has been formally made, at the appropriate time it will be announced. But I can say as Chancellor, I do have to be able to answer the question as to why it costs 10 times more to build high-speed rail in this country than it does in France. And we need to understand that. We are absolutely committed to having proper economic infrastructure in this country and to spreading opportunity throughout the country. Of course we are. But at the right time, of course, we'll be able to tell you what the decision is, and you'll be able to ask me and others all those questions.
Chancellor, a bunch of Conservative MPs have raised concerns in the last few days and weeks over Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary's speech on immigration in the US. Do you side with Suella Braverman? Do you think she went too far? From a personal point of view, what's your stance on this whole Stop the Boats fiasco?
Well, I am married to an immigrant, and I always believe that we benefit massively as a country from welcoming the brightest and best from all over the world. Suella Braverman wouldn't use my words, I wouldn't use her words, but she is absolutely right that the social contract that makes Britain one of the most tolerant countries in the world when it comes to immigrants depends on fairness. And what we're seeing at the moment with these criminal gangs smuggling thousands of people over the channel is not fair. It's an abuse of the way the law works in Britain. It's an abuse of all the public services that you get free of charge here. And she is absolutely right to tackle that, because otherwise we will undermine that social contract and we won't have that tolerant attitude that we're so proud of having in this country.
And Chancellor, in our TalkTV poll from earlier this morning, we asked, can the Tories win an outright majority at the next election? An overwhelming 57% said no. Are you going to be looking for a job this time next year?
Well, I'm very confident that we can turn things around. Of course, we're coming from the outside on this one because of all the big global shocks that we've seen. But I think when it comes to the general election, that's very different to what people say in opinion polls. Opinion polls are a kind of referendum on how are you feeling right now. An election is a choice for the future. And what they're going to see from Rishi Sunak is a Prime Minister who's prepared to take the tough and difficult decisions to give us that long-term future that we all want. And I think when it comes to that choice between Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, people will see that Rishi Sunak is by far the best qualified candidate.
Jeremy Hunt, one final question, if I may. I don't know if this is true or not. There were rumours over the weekend that you heard saying that if you get inflation to 3%, you will not only call an election, but do the tax cuts that everybody craves. What's your response to that?
It's just a misrepresentation of what I said. What I said was that our plan for the economy is working. We're bringing down inflation. It's going to go down even further. And I think people will feel more optimistic and positive when that happens. But I've always said that the priority has to be bringing down inflation, not tax cuts. But we'll come to those when it's possible to do so.
Jeremy Hunt, thank you very, very much indeed, joining us live from Manchester there. Don't politicians have all the answers?
They do.